Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. Curry, one-on-one. Irving puts it up. It's good. Kyrie Irving from downtown. The three, steps back, crossover, puts up a three. Rebound James. Second. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
Cleveland! This is for you!
Good afternoon and welcome, Cavs fans, to another episode of the Block the Shot to Stop. Here with Tim Daniel. I am Kevin Lynch, and we're going to do our NBA Weekly episode. Lot to cover today, Tim. We're going to talk about the Cavs' upcoming opponents, the breaking news today with the Isaac Okoro injury and how that'll affect the Cavs and the rotation and everything. But real quick, we're going to talk about the one thing the Cavs didn't get to do, and that was the NBA Cup, and the finals were this week. The Milwaukee Bucks ended up winning it 97-81 over the Oklahoma City Thunder. That score is correct, and it is not 1997. So that's kind of where we'll start, Tim. We both predicted the Bucks would win when we talked about it last week. Yes, we look smart. I did not think they'd necessarily win the way they did, but right. What did you see from the finals and just your overall impressions of the second NBA Cup this year?
So, as we know, I really like it. I love the Cup. Big fan of it. I'm not into, I know you're the guy who's more into European football than I am. So you understand it probably a little more than I do as far as the breakdown. But for me, I think it's a really good thing. I think it's a lot of fun. And for these teams like Oklahoma City, who really are kind of trying to take that next step, it gives them an experience of what it's like when all the pressure's on and you have to figure out a way to win games. Now, they didn't win this game. But I think it was good for them to go through this. And now we'll see how things look this weekend when these teams kind of go after. Will it be a repeat of last year with the Lakers and the Pacers, where it took them a long time to get back going? I hope not for their sakes. I do hope for the Bucks at least it takes till Saturday for them to get going for obvious reasons. But overall, I think it's great. I think it's an awesome thing, and I really enjoyed it. I saw Tim Bontemps talk about there's talks about the semifinals going to being on actual NBA courts and not just the neutral site in Vegas, and the championship being in Vegas. I realistically do think that would be a better idea because if you saw the ticket sales for this game once, the Lakers weren't involved or, the big market teams, the Celtics weren't involved. People weren't rushing to get tickets for this. So I think that would be really good for it. And then you can kind of give those teams a couple of days to get to Vegas and make that happen. And then as far as the game goes, Milwaukee looked like they wanted it more. They were super physical. Giannis was Giannis. And then I wanted to shout out, I talked to you about it off air. Andre Jackson Jr. Kev, I got to shout out my Big East guys. Just guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and holding him to 8 of 24 shooting made things extremely difficult for him throughout the game. He was awesome. We talked about a few weeks ago that I'm not a huge believer in the Bucks, but they are starting to prove me wrong. I'm starting to think maybe they are going to be putting something together here. Yeah,
you're right. And you have a lot to go through. I'm going to do a couple of them one by one. So the first thing that I wrote down, you were talking about the growing pains that's is so common in the NBA, right? The young team is coming up and they have to lose a couple of times before they win. Yeah. And I almost wonder if the NBA Cup might shave some of that off. Instead of having to go through 2 or 3 postseasons of kind of disappointments or progressing further, if an NBA Cup experience like the Thunder had or even the Houston Rockets had could maybe accelerate the development and the postseason success that some of these young teams have. So I completely agree with you that I think the Thunder, between last season's playoff experience and this NBA Cup experience, are going to be better positioned to succeed in the Western Conference playoffs this year. So I thought that was a really astute observation by you. The other thing, I agree with the playing more of these games at home. The semifinals you particularly were talking about. I do think having those at home and then having the finals, I don't think it has to be in Vegas every year. I think they could move around where the finals is, but the finals should be on Saturday night. I know they're trying to showcase the semifinals by having a back-to-back on Saturday night, but I think the NBA would be in a much better spot to play the semifinals. You're right. Maybe the the team with the better record hosts or something like that. And you can get that team's fans there, actually create a home court advantage, give the teams that have been having a better regular season at this point an incentive to, win more games. So that way you get to potentially host NBA Cup games. And then the finals has to be on Saturday night, because not only like ratings on the Tuesday nights is a little rough, but especially you said attendance. It's really hard for people to get somewhere for a Tuesday night, especially if they want to go Saturday and then stay till Tuesday. That's too long to be in Vegas. Nobody wants to be in Vegas for 4 or 5 nights. So, I'm
still yet to go. So,
and the last point you made about the Bucks, and this is what I want to talk to you about. Like, I think the number one thing is that I've really, it's been coming the last few weeks, and kind of the official statement was made with the NBA Cup. Giannis is neck and neck with Jokic for MVP now. Everyone thought Jokic was going to run away with it, and he is having an unbelievable offensive year. But the combination of Denver not being as good of a team, the Bucks getting hot, and then Giannis doing what he's doing, he was incredible. He was incredible. He's been incredible for the last several weeks. Ever since we all wrote the Bucks off, Giannis has just turned it on, and frankly been right there with Jokic as the best player in the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. Not to reference him again, but Bontemps literally said he is the most destructive basketball player in transition that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think I agree.
Yeah. It's tough. Like, I think he's 1-2 with LeBron. Like peak LeBron was quite a bit that too. But like,
yeah,
I would say those two are the best in transition, just because the size, athleticism, no one's stepping in to take a charge against either of those guys. And even if they did, I don't even know if it would matter. But yeah. And then when you combine, Giannis is still one of the best rim protectors and big man defenders in the league. I think that's where you could say he has a clear advantage over Jokic. Like, the Bucks keep accelerating their season the way they have. They end up as a top 4 seed or something in the NBA, and he keeps playing like this. I think he's going to be the MVP this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said this a couple weeks ago. LeBron in transition, Giannis is a second coming of LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
In perimeter defense, in rim protecting defense, he is right above Shaquille O'Neal at this point. And that's not hyperbole. That's also not a dig on Shaquille O'Neal, because you're going to have a hard time finding someone that's a bigger Shaq fan than me. But I legitimately think if it's like, I need to get someone to take care of the take care of the rim, and I have to win a game, and I have one guy, and Shaq would kill me for saying this and probably say I don't know anything about basketball if he heard this clip, I would take Giannis.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you look at Giannis's numbers, they certainly pop out to you because they're incredible. But like, it's not like he's setting like crazy career highs in anything. Like he is averaging a career high in points. His highest ever was 31. He's at almost 33 a game. He's right about at his peak for assists, which was about 6.5 last year. He's just over 6 this year. No, like every year he averages 11 point something rebounds. I think the difference is this year he has given up just shooting threes. Unless he absolutely has to, he shoots 3, and he's like, you know what? I am the most athletic guy in the league. I'm just going to dunk on you. And when he kind of has that mindset, he is incredibly difficult to stop.
I completely agree, man. He is. So I've done I've always wanted to do an episode where I talk about the most fun players I've seen live.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely top 3.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone, if you've seen Giannis Antetokounmpo live, he alone is worth watching the entire game to see some insane thing that you've never seen before.
Yeah. Well, let's do it real quick. Who's your top 3 live?
LeBron, obviously, because
Yeah,
I saw peak of powers LeBron in person. Giannis, because I saw Giannis in the most improved player year. So before he was the MVP, and you went, oh my goodness, actually going against LeBron. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I went to that game earlier this year, man. Donovan Mitchell in person is, and I'm just saying this because it's a Cavs show. Donovan Mitchell and Kyrie are pretty close to each other and really fun players to watch play live basketball, because they're just so obviously completely different move sets. Sets of like how they play, but just unreal talent and the ability to kind of find their spots and make things happen. So those two are neck and neck for 3 for me, for sure.
Yeah. So I have the same top 2, LeBron and Giannis. I agree. I've been lucky to see both of them live. The correct answer for my third is probably peak Derrick Rose. But that's
I
what
saw
my head
Cavs
says.
Derrick Rose.
Yeah.
So.
So I was lucky. I had Chicago season tickets when he was in his prime. And so that's probably the right answer. But my heart says Muggsy Bogues.
Oh,
I got
really?
to see Muggsy Bogues play in person a couple of times. I was a big Charlotte Hornets fan when I was young, mostly because of the starter jacket we covered. And when they had Grandmama and Alonzo Mourning and Muggsy Bogues, and my dad took me up to Indianapolis to see him play the Pacers a couple of times growing up, and I got to see Muggsy Bogues, and that was like an unreal experience because I was I think the last time I was maybe in 6th or 7th grade, and this guy who was barely taller than me was playing on an NBA floor, and I thought that was just an incredible thing to see.
That is cool.
And so, but yeah, no. Wrapping up the cup, I mean, Giannis was incredible. And the other thing we should talk about is you alluded to Andre Jackson, but really the whole defense that the Bucks played, probably a combination of the Bucks defense and, the young Thunder, maybe, staring into the bright lights. They scored 31 points in the second half of that game. And if you score that few points in the NBA, it's probably a combination of bad offense and really good defense. And I think probably both can be true there. And the Bucks, they could be a contender, man. Giannis is playing like this. Dame's playing really well. They're getting a little bit better contributions. They're kind of figuring out the rotation a little bit. They're going to be a team to watch from a Cavs perspective. There could be somebody that they very well have to play in the playoffs, and it could be a second round opponents. And yeah, we'll keep an eye on the Bucks. But more importantly, let's talk about the Cavs. We got two Cavs topics we want to talk about. The Isaac Okoro news is obviously the big news of the day, but we're going to start with the Cavs' upcoming schedule. We kind of want to look at the rest of December because we kind of talked about this. The next 3 games are time to make hay. Get 3 wins, or at least 2 out of 3, because they got the Bucks coming off the NBA Finals. Would not be surprised that if they rested a couple of guys on Friday night. And then you got the Sixers, who are still struggling, and then you got the Jazz, who might be the worst team in the league, as the next 3. And we'll talk about them. But after that, the Cavs start a gauntlet. They go against the Nuggets, who are struggling, but they have Jokic still. Then they go out west. They play a back-to-back against the Warriors and the Lakers. They got the Mavericks and Giannis. And then a couple games later, they have the Thunder as well. So they have a gauntlet coming up after these first 3. So or after these next 3. So with these next 3, we can talk about individually or as a whole. What do the Cavs need to do other than knock off some rust as they're going to get back into playing a lot of basketball?
Whew, man. Well, the 3 spot now really has a lot of questions with Okoro out and Strus not back yet. Could he potentially be back Friday? We don't know. Yeah. But does this mean Karis LeVert's going to be starting is the big question for me. Because I feel like you're running out of options while you're knocking guys down. George could maybe start at the 3, but I don't know if that makes it's a great fit. Yeah, right. I feel the same way. So I think you got to go that route. And I worry about that in the sense that he's been so good in his current role. What's it going to look like when he's playing more minutes? But I also rely on him to be a very good NBA player who's been in the league for a long time. So I'm sure he's going to be prepared for it. So that's the first thing is I'm trying to make sure of. So, and like I said, we'll touch on that here in a minute, but the games are interesting. So we have no idea what the Bucks are going to do Friday. Are they going to play everybody? Are they going to sit guys? I'm with you. I could see them sitting guys, but knowing that Giannis Antetokounmpo does not like to sit out basketball games. Yeah. I imagine that he's going to want to play and try to do his best to play. So if you're the Cavs, you got to see if you can take advantage of the fact they've played so much basketball of late and you haven't. I think that's key number 1, obviously. And your ability to score in transition, you're still faster than the Bucks. You're still more athletic than the Bucks. They're still a very old team who relies strictly on getting their defense set to make things happen offensively. Where if you're Cleveland, obviously your ability to score in transition is why you're where you're at. So I think that's a really interesting matchup there. Philly, it's another toss-up because you have no clue who's going to play between the big 3 and how they're going to look. We talked about now that Jared McCain's out. They kind of lose a little bit more of that punch that they'd had when they were kind of getting rolling there for a minute. I still suspect Philly is going to make a run into the postseason at some point in the East, as long as they don't fall completely under. But what do they look like in that game? It's going to be interesting. You're back home for that, so that's good. So you kind of have the Rocket Mortgage crowd behind you. And then you mentioned Utah. Yeah, really not a good team by any stretch of the matter. Trying their best to win capture the flag, as we talked about with Brooklyn the other day. Have guys that you really like that you think could really help out good basketball teams. Walker Kessler, obviously old friend Colin Sexton's hanging out over there. But you suspect that Cleveland's going to take care of business in that one. Such a weird thing because I like their. I'm trying to figure out the words. I like their front office. I like Will Hardy. And if you're Will Hardy and you're a good NBA coach, how much longer are you going to put up with this? Like, I think about that with Billy Donovan all the time. Like, why are you still there? You can do better.
Yeah, they're definitely playing the long game as much as any NBA franchise right now. But I don't know. For me, you got these next three at home. You got a probably a little bit banged up, a little bit tired Bucks team, even if they are kind of accelerating. Then you have the struggling Sixers and the Jazz. I think there's a great opportunity to go 3-0 because you very well may drop some like in that stretch afterwards. They got five straight games away from home against high quality opponents. 4 out of the 5 are high quality opponents. And
the Lakers.
Yeah, and I think you win 2 or 3, you're happy you win, but you have a good chance to win all 3 of these coming up. And I think for them, the biggest obstacle will be Friday nights playing because they played so little recently, knocking off the rust, adjusting to Isaac Okoro being out as he's been such a huge part of the team so far this season. And then there's always the typical, struggles of a back-to-back or a 3rd and 4 nights, just kind of having the perseverance and everything and to win all those. But I do think they have a great opportunity to win those 3. And I guess we'll talk about the next 3 after that, which are Nuggets, Warriors, Lakers, all away from home. You have 3 of the biggest stars in the league that they're playing, even if LeBron's back from vacation too. So it looks like we'll actually see him play.
Yep.
But this is a stretch. To me, you're just trying to not start a losing streak. Obviously you'd love to win 2 of these 3 and everything. But I think this is the most vulnerable stretch of the Cavs schedule so far this year, with being away from home, traveling all the way to the West Coast, playing so many games in a short time after having so much time off recently. Like, my goal is these last 6 games of December, if they come out of it with a winning record, if they're 4-2 in those 6 games, I'm ecstatic.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Of course.
They smoked all 3 of these teams already this year.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And I understand this, the travel portion here. They had all 3 of those teams at home, and it's the West Coast, and that's tricky. And one of those games is the stupidest scheduled time of all time for an NBA game in the history of the regular season, being the Lakers game on New Year's Eve at 9 p.m. Eastern. I understand, like, if you're Los Angeles, wouldn't you want that to be at 3:00 your time so everyone can kind of, whatever. Traffic's going to be so terrible that night in LA, but you exploited all of these teams' weaknesses. You mentioned it. Yeah. Jokic is on the Nuggets. They let him do what he had to do, and they took care of everyone else. Yeah. I mean, when you go back and watch that game, the Laker game, like I said, I was there. Lakers had no chance against them on the floor. No chance. I mean, Cleveland literally got everything they wanted that game. There were stretches. It got so bad that with 5 minutes ago, people were chanting for Bronny to come in the game.
And they got it.
Yeah. And he scored. So, my knowledge, I think still is only NBA bucket. I'd have to double check that. And then Golden State, I mean, gosh, it was like from jump. You and I were on assignment that night, and we said, we got 6 minutes left in the 4th quarter. You just want to go ahead and knock this out because the game's over? Yeah. And I understand Golden State's gotten better since then, getting Schroeder, and for, D'Anthony Melton, who's not playing, so they have an extra body. But I don't really worry about these 3 teams because they're all so flawed. And so I feel like if you're Cleveland, you feel really good going against these teams, even without Okoro. That, I've beat these guys before. I don't see any reason why my game plan is going to change, because how much of these 3 teams changed since that stretch when they beat all these teams. I think they'll feel okay.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but sometimes in the NBA, the biggest challenge is the schedule more than the opponents.
Sure.
Because I think we would both agree they're a significantly better team than the Heat, but they recently lost a game by 15 points to the Heat because it was at the end of it was off a back-to-back, off of a stretch where they played a ton of basketball. Evan Mobley rolls his ankle, doesn't play the second half, so stuff like that can happen when you play so many games in a row. And that's why I'm not trying to be any negative or like,
no.
Cavs are better than
a podcast, Kev.
Yeah. Cavs are better than all 6 of these teams, but sometimes the schedule just gets you. Sometimes when you play, if you have little bumps, little injuries, like you can't play the back-to-back, but you could play if there was 2 or 3 days between games, So that's why I'm of the mind, do they have a realistic chance just by pure talent to win all 6 of these games, start another long winning stretch? Absolutely. But realistically, with the schedule and the quality of some of the opponents, and more importantly, the quality of their star players, the fact that I think Denver and Golden State have 2 of the best home court advantages in the NBA between the Golden State crowd, the Denver, the altitude to go with the crowd, that I'm of the mind, you go 4-2 or better in these games, you're ecstatic and you're starting the new year still comfortably in first place with a large gap between you and third place, and then you just keep rolling.
Yeah, those are fair points.
I
lean into the talent more than I lean into the schedule there. So, but yeah, I don't think you're wrong by any means.
Yeah, for sure. And a big challenge for this stretch will also be they are going to be without their best perimeter defender in Isaac Okoro. We learned today he sprained an AC joint in his shoulder. I think this is right. He's going to be out. He's going to be out for a while. They said they'll reevaluate him after 2 weeks, which usually means he's going to be out for at least 4. Yeah. And he has been a huge part of their team this year. His minutes have fluctuated a little bit. We talked about him, ironically, in the last podcast, wanting him to get more minutes. And he, as we said, we've given him a lot of credit that he fills a maybe the biggest need this Cavs have is perimeter defender. And I think maybe that's going into my thinking. They're about to play, Dame Lillard, Tyrese Maxey, Stephen Curry, Jamal Murray, and they're going to play them all without Isaac Okoro, your best perimeter defender, and that could cause you to drop a game. So, like, what are you expecting the Cavs to do to try and, cover up for the loss of Okoro over these next few weeks?
I think I mentioned a little bit ago, I think you're kind of at the point where you have to bump Karis LeVert up, and I don't love that. Not that I don't love Karis. I certainly do. Karis has just been so good in his current role. Mm-hmm. And you and I talked about, we were really nervous about his knee. It looked like his first game back. We were worried about that. And it seems like he's kind of put that behind him for this last stretch. So I think if you're Kenny Atkinson, that's kind of your only option right now. We just talked about Imani Bates in the last episode. He's not ready to play in those games. He's, he has a 2-way. I get it. JT Thor. We like JT Thor. He's not ready for those matchups either. So this is where you're at. It's down to George and Karis, and you're going to need to have Ty Jerome, TJ Maxx find that stretch again, find that vibe again that he was having, because he doesn't play the position that Isaac Okoro plays, but Isaac Okoro was shooting 49% from 3 when the injury happened. And Tyrese Maxx, and TJ Maxx, Ty Jerome is one of your better 3-point shooters as well. So you need him to kind of get back to what he was doing when he was really hot, where lately I wouldn't say he's struggled, but hasn't been shooting at the same level he had been the year before. Throughout the year before the Tange. And defensively, I think you're going to see a lot more of Mobley on the perimeter.
Yeah.
Because I think you're going to see him guarding the LeBrons. I think you're going to see him guarding there's going to be stretches where he's guarding Buddy Hield in that Golden State game, because he's your best chance. I don't know if they'll put him on Steph for the sake of Steph's agility.
I don't think so.
By any means, but obviously when he plays Milwaukee, that's the honest assignment is Mobley, and rightfully so. He's definitely earned the right to have that assignment. So you're going to probably see a lot more of Mobley coming out on the perimeter. See a lot more of Allen I suspect he'll probably play a lot more zone realistically, to kind of attack the corners. So I'm really curious about that, but it's a big loss regardless of how you want to look at it.
It is a big loss, and I'm gonna make a different gamble here. What they're gonna do, I think they keep LeVert in the same role, and my guess is If Strus comes back, they potentially just put him in the starting lineup, even if they're going to reduce his minutes. So I think that's a possibility. Or what I'd lean to, I actually think they might go ahead and start Dean Wade and put him back in the starting lineup. As much as he struggled, he's probably your best, a big gap, but best, perimeter defender to fill that need. And Kenny Atkinson may look at like, we need Dean Wade at some point this season. We need to get him going. And maybe the best chance to get him going is to reinsert him in the starting lineup. That's when he was playing his best this year, is when he was in the starting lineup early in the year. So I actually think he's going to try and keep LeVert. LeVert's minutes may tick up, but still keep him in that 6-man role to kind of, so they don't have to, because if they start LeVert, they're going to have to drastically change their rotations to make sure 2 or 3 of those starters are on the floor at the same time. I actually think they're going to keep LeVert in the role that he's in, though his minutes may tick up, and look to start Strus if he does come back, or possibly Dean Wade and if Dean Wade is having a really big shooting night, he'll start, but then he'll only get 16, 18 minutes.
Yeah, and realistically, even with the point I just made, I mean, who starts an NBA game is really overrated. It's really who's on there when the minutes matters the most, that last 5-6 minutes of a game.
Yeah.
And Karras for sure will probably be in there unless Max Strus is having one of those insane Max Strus 30-point, 7 of 9 3-point shooting games. But honestly, I think that's kind of your best route there. I do like your point about Dean Wade. I said that, I said this on after the last game. I felt like that, there is a time they're going to need him again really bad this year. And I think that's a good way to kind of get him back to being the Dean Wade we saw at the beginning of the year when he was starting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think you have great points. And I think that, the beauty in this is, Okoro is a big loss. But do you feel worse in any of those 3 options we just mentioned? Because obviously, what I mean by worse is not, those guys aren't the defender Isaac Okoro is, but you can still win a lot of basketball games with either of those 3 options.
Yeah, you for sure can. This is not an injury I'm freaking out about. One, because it's a recoverable injury and it's December. So if Isaac Okoro was lost for the season, I would be down, because I really think he is a big part of this team, but especially could be a big part of it in the postseason. When they are playing the best players in the league and they're going to need someone to guard those perimeter, all-stars that they'll be playing against. I do think the loss could be mitigated if Max does come back. I mean, we don't know what's going on there. He was supposed to come back last Friday, and then it was maybe Monday, and then he didn't come back for either. We don't know if this is just being precautionary, but then it's ticking on if he doesn't play this weekend, it's ticking on suspicious, right? Like, did he have a setback? Is it going to be longer than they're telling us? And you know what the right answer is? We don't know what the right answer is for starting, but for closing lineups, for minute distribution, it's probably going to vary game to game, because it's varied based on opponent, based on performance by a lot of these bench guys. Yeah. I think there's games that you could get away with a front court of Niang, Mobley, Allen at times, and there's teams you absolutely can't get away with that against, and you're not going to be able to do it. But it'll probably vary. Who knows who starts? But as you said, doesn't really matter who starts. We expect LeVert to close games because he often closed games anyway. And we think this is something the Cavs will get through. They may drop an extra game or 2 over the next few weeks because a point guard or off guard that Isaac Okoro will be guarding has a huge game. But this is definitely not something that's going to sink them, and something that I think they can make some adjustments to kind of work within in the short term.
Yeah, I'm with you. Nice opportunity for guys like Jalen Tyson as well to they're probably going to see, when they do play, get more opportunities to kind of see if he can kind of get more comfortable in the NBA game. Like you said, it's great that this is in December, January, and not March, April. So I'm really, really curious about how everything's going to shake out. And I'm also kind of excited because I'm definitely bummed that we don't have Isaac Okoro, but I feel good about where the team's at.
I do too. And one thing whenever, something like this happens, it does present an opportunity, like you said. And one thing, while we're talking about opportunity for individual guys who could start, who could get more minutes, all those kind of things, there's also the way you play opportunity. And this could be an opportunity for them to start working the ball inside and doing more of that pick and roll and getting Allen and Mobley more shots at the basket like they were at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
Their 3-point attempts aren't crazy by NBA standards. They're at 39 a game, but they have been ticking up throughout the course of the season. So could you get that for the stretch down to 35 a game and get 4 more shots at the basket for your big guys? And what would that do to not only, better their offense and, getting more easy looks, but also the more shots you get the rim, the more open those 3-pointers become, because the defense has to, pick your poison at some point. So I think along with the opportunity that's going to be there for players, and whether it's in the rotation or starting to get more minutes, there's also the opportunity to maybe adjust your offense like back to, focusing a little bit more on getting Mobley and Allen the ball inside at times, which I hope they do, because when the Cavs were at their absolute best that first 3 weeks of the season, Mobley and Allen were integral parts of the offense, both of them. And now it seems like it's kind of one or the other.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And so I think that's going to be really, really beneficial for them in that circumstance. And I think for Kenny Atkinson, this is going to be really good for him to figure out, who he can count on more and more. So yeah, it's a bummer, but also it's an opportunity. So
yeah. Well, with that, we can wrap up this. I did want to mention for this NBA Weekly episode, we'll probably take next week off, because just about everybody's taking next week off with Christmas and everything, and then come back to you in the new year. Come January, February, we actually have a lot of guests lined up. It's not that I don't love doing this with both Tim and Skylar, but we'll still have them. But we're going to have some guests come on, talk about like potential things that the Cavs could do with the trade markets. We're bringing some. I think we're going to bring some other, Cavs podcast hosts on to, get different perspectives on things, and really excited. And we're also, like we did earlier in the season, where we brought Will and Greg on from the Green with Envy. We're going to start bringing on some other Blue Wire and non-Blue Wire podcasts against, teams that the Cavs are competing against or happen to have a game against. So we'll have a lot of exciting guests come up in the new year. So even though we'll take NBA Weekly off, we are going to be still covering every Cavs game. Luckily, they're not playing on Christmas this year. Otherwise, I don't know what we do. But we will still cover. We're still going to cover each and every game throughout the holiday season between Tim, Skylar, and myself. And shout out to Skylar. Skylar is currently moving today, so we hope everything's going well with you. We hope you're having a more relaxing moving experience than I did, and that you can get your podcast equipment set up by tomorrow night, because you and me are on tomorrow night. So with that, anything else? Last words, Tim?
Just want to say one quick thing. We don't have to do a whole conversation about it. Shout out Kevin Durant for being brutally honest about how terrible the new All-Star game format is. It's dumb.
We'll cover that on a NBA Weekly as we get closer to the All-Star game, because I think we all agree. We all have some takes about that. So yeah, let's table that until we get a little bit closer to the All-Star game, and then we'll explain kind of what they're doing now versus what they've done traditionally and why it's stupid. So with that, thanks again for listening to the Block the Shot to Stop podcast. For Tim Daniel and for the missing Skylar Webker, I'm Kevin Lynch. Thanks for tuning in.